The moment you feel the burning urge to defend yourself to someone who has misunderstood you, you have already handed them the keys to your internal citadel. We live in a world that treats loudness as power and constant justification as a virtue, yet the truest form of human sovereignty is found in the absolute refusal to explain yourself. When someone misinterprets your actions, misjudges your character, or projects their own insecurities onto your life, your modern instinct is to build a massive wall of words to correct them. You believe that if you just phrase your intentions perfectly, if you just give them enough context, they will finally see the truth and validate your existence. But this impulse is not a search for clarity, it is a quiet confession of weakness. It is an admission that your peace of mind is entirely dependent on their permission to feel secure. The ancient Stoics understood a terrifyingly beautiful truth about human nature. The second you try to manage how another person perceives you, you become their prisoner. Silence is not merely the absence of speech, it is the ultimate declaration of personal autonomy. Look closely at the hidden anxiety that fuels the desperate need to over-explain. When you spend 20 minutes drafting a text message to justify a simple boundary, or when you replay an argument in your mind, practicing the perfect comeback, you are operating from a state of deep psychological survival. You are terrified of being cast out, terrified of being perceived as the villain in someone else's narrative. This fear forces you to bleed energy, offering up pieces of your private life, your motives, and your reasoning to people who have no right to them. You treat their disapproval as a trial where you must act as your own defense attorney, pleading for a verdict of innocence. But who appointed them as your judge? The anxiety of over-explaining comes from a fractured belief that you are only correct if everyone around you agrees that you are. It is an agonizing way to live, turning every social interaction into a fragile performance where one wrong look can shatter your internal stability. You are essentially begging the world to see you as good, completely forgetting that your goodness does not require an audience to exist. When you make the conscious decision to drop the shield of explanation, a sudden and profound shift occurs in your personal sovereignty. Imagine the raw power of someone looking you in the eye, throwing a false accusation or a sharp piece of criticism your way, and meeting it with nothing but a calm, unblinking silence. In that exact moment, the vacuum you create forces the energy of their hostility right back onto them. By refusing to offer a defense, you communicate a radical truth. Their opinion of you is so entirely irrelevant to your reality that it does not even warrant the breath it takes to argue. You immediately stop bleeding your life force into arguments that were designed to drain you from the start. This is the moment you reclaim your mind. You begin to understand that your reasons belong exclusively to you, and you do not owe the world a guided tour of your decisions. True strength is not found in winning the debate. It is found in recognizing that the debate itself is beneath your dignity. This brings us directly to the foundational axis of Stoic philosophy, the dichotomy of control. Epictetus laid this truth bare when he reminded us that some things are up to us, while other things are completely outside of our power. Your thoughts, your impulses, your desires, and your processing of reality are yours to govern. The opinions of others, the rumors they spread, the judgments they form in their own minds, and their inability to see your worth are completely outside of your realm of ownership. When you stress over what someone thinks of your life choices, you are quite literally trying to control the uncontrollable. It is a form of madness. You are taking your happiness and burying it in the volatile, unpredictable soil of another human being's mind. They can change their opinion of you based on nothing more than a bad mood, a poor night's sleep, or their own unhealed trauma. To base your self-worth on something so incredibly fragile is to guarantee your own chronic suffering. The Stoic path demands that you draw a sharp line in the sand, leaving the perceptions of others on their side, while you remain firmly anchored on yours. Consider how much heavier your life becomes when you carry the burden of trying to be understood by everyone. You dilute your purpose, you soften your edges, and you compromise your boundaries just to keep the peace and remain palatable to the masses. But the moment you accept that you are perfectly fine with being misunderstood. An incredible weight lifts from your shoulders. You stop looking for your reflection in the distorted mirrors of other people's expectations. Let them think you are arrogant. Let them think you are quiet. Let them think you are wrong. Their mental constructs of you do not alter the molecular reality of who you actually are. Your character is built in the dark through your private choices, your self-discipline, and your commitment to virtue, not through the applause or validation of a crowd. When you master the art of silent containment, you discover that the loudest voice in the room is often the weakest, and the quietest presence is often the most dangerous to cross. As you move through existence, you will constantly encounter individuals who actively try to bait you into defending yourself. They will use passive-aggressive remarks, subtle insults, or outright confrontation to pull you down into the mud with them. They want the reaction. They crave the emotional feedback because it reassures them that they have power over your emotional state. When you give in and start explaining your side, you give them exactly what they want. You validate their right to question you. But when you look at their chaos and choose to remain a completely still, undisturbed pool of water, their weapons lose all efficacy. You become a psychological ghost, completely immune to their manipulation. This level of detachment is not cold or cruel. It is a profound act of self-preservation and supreme self-respect. You are deciding that your internal peace is far too valuable to be traded for a fleeting moment of being right in an argument that will not matter tomorrow. To truly step into this unshakable inner strength, you must learn to sit comfortably with the discomfort of being judged. It is an uncomfortable sensation at first, watching someone think poorly of you while you hold the truth in your heart and say nothing. The ego screams for rescue, begging you to speak up and set the record straight. But if you can breathe through that initial wave of panic, if you can let the misconception exist without trying to fix it, you break the conditioning of a lifetime. You realize that nothing happened. The sky did not fall, your heart kept beating, and your reality remained perfectly intact despite their negative thoughts. This is the birth of true freedom. You are no longer performing for a world of critics. You are living strictly in accordance with your own nature. This silent sovereignty is the first true behavior of the unbreakable mind. It is the understanding that your life is a private masterpiece, not a public utility open for debate or modification. By locking the gates of your mind against the opinions of the outside world, you create the space necessary to build something truly lasting within yourself. You transition from a leaf blown about by every passing wind of criticism into an ancient rock against which the crashing waves break in vain. The world will continue to judge, to speculate, and to misunderstand, but you will simply watch it happen from a place of undisturbed serenity, knowing that the ultimate power move is to let them think whatever they wish while you execute your life in absolute silence. The ancient world was filled with men who commanded empires, yet remained absolute slaves to their own anger. True power was never measured by the number of legions a man deployed, but by the speed with which he conquered his own impulses. Marcus Aurelius sat at the absolute peak of the Roman world, yet his daily battle was fought not against barbarian tribes on the frozen frontiers, but within the silent corridors of his own mind. Imagine a man who could order the execution of anyone who displeased him, choosing instead to sit by a flickering candle at midnight, writing reminders to himself to tolerate the backstabbing, the ingratitude, and the arrogance of the people he had to govern. He did not draft public decrees defending his honor against the political rumors of Rome. He understood that the moment a ruler feels the need to defend his character to the mob, he abdicates his throne and becomes a servant to their judgment. He built an inner citadel, a fortress of the soul that no external betrayal could breach. When someone betrays you, breaks your trust, or actively plots to undermine your progress, your natural psychological reaction is to strike back or cry out in pain. You want to expose their malice to the world. You want everyone to see the injustice you have suffered so you can feel vindicated. But this reaction is exactly what the betrayer expects. They are waiting for the splash when they throw a stone into your waters. If you explode in anger, Or if you enter the public arena to defend your reputation, you have allowed their poison to alter your internal chemistry. You have let them dictate your emotional state. The Stoic approach to betrayal is so radical that it feels almost unnatural to the modern mind. You simply look at the betrayal, recognize it as an inevitable product of a flawed human nature, and move forward without a single word of complaint. You do not seek revenge, nor do you seek an apology. You treat their malice as you would treat a sudden rainstorm, an external event that is entirely out of your control, but one that has absolutely no power to stain the purity of your character unless you allow it to. This level of restraint requires a deep, uncompromising understanding of public turmoil and personal isolation. To stand in the center of a crowded room, knowing that people are whispering about you, misrepresenting your intentions, or actively hoping for your failure, and to remain completely untouched, is the definition of true majesty. Most people are entirely hollow. They exist only through the feedback loops of their social circles. If the crowd applauds, they feel large. If the crowd jeers, they shrink into nothingness. A Stoic, however, operates from a center of gravity that is entirely self-contained. Your value is not a variable that fluctuates based on public consensus. It is a fixed constant determined solely by your commitment to reason, justice, and self-mastery. When the public square is in an absolute frenzy of judgment, your only duty is to retreat inward, into that quiet space where external noise cannot penetrate, and ask yourself if you have acted with integrity. If the answer is yes, then the noise of the world becomes nothing more than the buzzing of distant insects. Look at how much energy is wasted in the modern world through the constant maintenance of social masks. People spend their entire lives trying to curate an image of success, happiness, and perfection for an audience that does not truly care about them. They are terrified of being seen as flawed, so they constantly issue public statements, explanations, and apologies to keep the audience happy. This is a form of voluntary slavery. By refusing to participate in this superficial theater, you reclaim a massive reservoir of mental clarity. Let the world have its drama. Let them argue, judge, and condemn. Your life is not a brand to be managed, it is a soul to be cultivated. When you stop caring whether the world views you as a hero or a villain, you gain a level of psychological immunity that makes you practically invincible. You can walk through the middle of a social storm and remain as calm as a stone at the bottom of a still lake. This brings us to the profound realization that the people who try to destroy you are actually your greatest teachers. They test your boundaries, they expose your remaining vanities, and they force you to discover whether your philosophy is just a collection of nice words or a living, breathing reality. Anyone can be calm and virtuous when life is going perfectly, when friends are loyal and the public is cheering. The true test of your inner citadel comes when the walls are being hammered by betrayal and false accusations. If you crumble under that pressure, if you lash out or sink into self-pity, then your philosophy was nothing but an illusion. But if you can look at the person who has wronged you and feel a sense of profound, objective pity for the fact that their soul is so diseased that they find joy in malice, you have achieved something truly extraordinary. You have risen above the human condition and stepped into the realm of the unbreakable. The internal containment of your energy is the secret fuel of all great achievements. Every time you refrain from gossiping, every time you choose not to correct a rumor, and every time you take an insult and bury it deep within your silence, that energy does not disappear. It is compressed. It is transformed into raw, focused power that you can direct toward your work, your discipline, and your personal growth. The man who explains himself is constantly venting his steam, leaving himself with no pressure to drive his engine forward. But the man who remains silent keeps the pressure contained. He uses that intensity to build a reality so undeniable that it completely obliterates the criticisms of his enemies without him ever having to say a single word. Your execution becomes your only defense, and your results become your only statement. As we transition deeper into this philosophy, we must confront the reality that this path will make you look strange to the average person. They will interpret your silence as weakness, your calmness as indifference, and your lack of defense as guilt. let them. Their inability to comprehend your depth is a reflection of their own limitations, not yours. You are playing a completely different game, one where the prize is not a temporary social victory, but absolute, permanent sovereignty over your own mind. Hold your ground. Keep the gates of your inner citadel locked against the chaos of the outside world, and remember that the truest form of revenge against a toxic society is to simply refuse to be like them. The moment you realize that other people's criticisms of you are almost never actually about you, the world loses its power to manipulate your emotions. What you must understand is the cold, mechanical reality of modern psychological projection. When someone attacks your choices, mocks your silence, or demands that you explain your lifestyle, they are not evaluating you objectively. They are projecting their own unhealed inadequacies, their aborted ambitions, and their deep-seated fears onto your canvas. A person who has compromised their own values to fit in cannot handle the sight of someone who walks alone in absolute self-containment. Your quiet autonomy acts as a mirror that reflects their own cowardice back at them, and that is a sight they cannot bear. So they attack. They try to force you into an argument, hoping to drag you down into the familiar mud of justification where they feel comfortable. If they can make you defensive, they have successfully shifted the focus away from their own internal emptiness and onto your defense. This is the psychological trap where most well-meaning people destroy their own progress. When you enter the arena to debate a critic, you are unknowingly participating in their theater. You are giving their projection a physical form and validating their right to judge you. The mechanics of human malice are highly predictable. People will actively weaponize your explanations against you. Every piece of context you provide, every detail of your personal life you offer up to prove your point, and every emotion you show becomes raw material for their next assault. They do not want to understand you. They want to dissect you. If you explain that you made a certain choice because you were tired or overwhelmed, they will label you as weak. If you explain that you did it for your future, they will label you as selfish. You cannot win a game where the referee is actively rooting for your failure. The only winning move is to walk off the field entirely, leaving them to argue with the empty air you left behind. To master this environment, you must implement the concept of strategic scarcity. In a society suffering from an oversaturation of information and a desperate need for constant attention, your presence and your thoughts must become a rare, expensive commodity. Most people are psychological open books. They broadcast their every thought, their every grievance, and their every plan to anyone who will listen. They are completely predictable, which makes them incredibly easy to manipulate and control. By choosing absolute silence, you introduce an element of profound mystery and unpredictability into your environment. When you refuse to explain your motives, people do not know what you are thinking, what your next move is, or where your vulnerabilities lie. Your silence creates a psychological vacuum that deeply unsettles those who wish to disrupt your peace. They will exhaust themselves trying to figure you out, while you remain perfectly still, conserving your energy and observing their confusion. This scarcity applies not only to your words, but to your emotional availability. You must become highly selective about who gets access to your internal state. If a casual acquaintance or a digital stranger can make your blood boil with a single comment, you are living in a state of absolute psychological poverty. You are giving away your most valuable asset, your peace of mind, for free to people who have invested absolutely nothing in your life. A Stoic treats their attention like a fortress. The gates are heavy, and the entry requirements are incredibly high. If an input from the outside world does not contribute to your wisdom, your virtue, or your practical execution, it does not deserve crossing the threshold of your consciousness. Let the opinions of the critics remain outside the walls, drifting away like smoke in the wind. Look at the immense freedom that comes from adopting this mindset. When you no longer care about correcting the record, you gain thousands of hours of mental bandwidth that used to be consumed by invisible arguments. You no longer lie awake at night crafting the perfect response to an insult that occurred 3 days ago. You stop viewing social interactions as a series of landmines you need to navigate, and start viewing them as external phenomena that have no intrinsic power over your soul. You recognize that if someone wants to think poorly of you, that is their administrative problem, not yours. They have to live with the toxic chemicals of bitterness and judgment circulating in their own bodies. You get to walk away completely clean, wrapped in the protective armor of your own self-respect. The world will tell you that you need to speak up, that you need to stand up for yourself, and that silence is a sign of submission. Do not buy into this lie. Submission is when you allow another person's voice to dictate your emotional reaction. Submission is when you alter your path because someone else thinks you should. Silence, when driven by absolute internal clarity, is an act of supreme dominance. It is the ultimate flex of control, showing that you are so completely anchored in your own reality that the loudest storms of public opinion cannot move you even an inch. You do not need to roar like a lion to show strength. The mountain does not roar, yet it outlasts every beast that roams its slopes. As we move forward into the deeper layers of this discipline, you must brace yourself for the fact that this psychological detachment will cause people to change their tactics. When they realize that direct attacks no longer work, they will try to use guilt, isolation, or passive-aggressive exclusion to bring you to heel. They will try to make your silence look like a crime. Expect this and meet it with the exact same unshakable calmness. Your commitment is to the truth of your character, not to the comfort of those who wish to exploit you. Keep your head down, maintain your strategic scarcity, and let your results do the talking while you remain beautifully, powerfully silent. The hardest battle you will ever fight on the path of self-containment is not against strangers or digital critics. It is against the people who sit at your own dinner table. When you begin to reclaim your personal sovereignty and adopt a life of quiet execution, the immediate pushback often comes from close family and friends. This is the classic psychological phenomenon of the crabs in a bucket mentality. When a single crab attempts to climb out of the bucket to freedom, the others do not cheer for its escape. They reach up and violently drag it back down to the bottom so that everyone shares the same fate. Your inner circle has grown comfortable with the old version of you, the version that was anxious, easily manipulated, and constantly looking for their approval. The moment you stop explaining yourself and start holding your boundaries in absolute silence, it terrifies them. They view your sudden independence as a silent indictment of their own stagnation. You must brace yourself for the specific language of domestic guilt. They will tell you that you have changed, that you are becoming cold, distant, or arrogant. They will use your love for them as a crowbar to pry open your boundaries, demanding to know why you are suddenly so quiet about your ambitions and your private life. This is where most people collapse. It is easy to ignore the insults of an enemy, but it is agonizing to hold your ground when a parent, a sibling, or a lifelong friend looks you in the eye and misinterprets your silence as hostility. Epictetus warned us about this exact domestic trap. He explicitly told his students that if they desired to make progress in philosophy, they must be prepared to look like fools and simpletons to the outside world, and especially to those within their own households. He reminded us that you cannot please your family and maintain your internal clarity at the same time. You must choose between their superficial comfort and your own absolute freedom. Look at the deep psychological necessity of radical domestic self-discipline. If you cannot maintain your silence within your own home, your philosophy is nothing but a fragile ornament. True strength is forged when you are trapped in an environment where people are actively poking at your vulnerabilities, trying to elicit the old reactive response from you. When a family member brings up a sensitive topic, hurls a passive-aggressive critique, or ridicules your new habits, your ego will scream to defend its honor. You will want to explain your new path, hoping to convert them so they finally understand and validate your journey. You must crush this urge instantly. They do not want an explanation. They want a reaction that proves they still have the power to move your needle. By meeting their domestic bait with a calm, pleasant, yet entirely unyielding silence, you establish an invisible wall of steel. You are communicating that while you love them, they no longer have administrative access to your emotional core. This level of discipline requires you to accept the absolute reality of public and private ridicule. When you refuse to participate in the family gossip, when you decline to defend yourself against their assumptions, and when you quietly execute your daily routines without seeking their applause, they will talk about you behind your back. They will create narratives to explain your behavior, labeling you as stubborn or eccentric. Let them build whatever stories they need to sleep at night. Your character is not subject to a family vote. You must realize that their perception of you is a product of their own mental conditioning, and trying to fix their perception is an absolute waste of your limited life force. Your only duty under your own roof is to act with justice, kindness, and immovable self-control. You do not owe them a debate, and you certainly do not owe them a compromise on your inner peace. Consider how much stronger you become when you pass this domestic test. If you can stand in your own living room, surrounded by the people who know your history, and remain completely unmoved by their judgments, then the outside world loses all power over you. The workplace, the social circles, and the digital masses become entirely trivial compared to the crucible of the household. You begin to treat your home not as a place where you beg for validation, but as a training ground for ultimate psychological immunity. You learn to smile, wish them well, and remain a complete mystery to those who share your DNA. As you master this domestic isolation, you will notice that the dynamic begins to shift. When your friends and family realize that their passive-aggressive remarks and emotional guilt trips no longer produce a reaction, they will slowly exhaust themselves. Silence is an apex predator in the realm of psychology. It starves arguments of the oxygen they need to survive. They will eventually accept your boundaries because they have no other choice. You will have taught them through your absolute lack of defense that your mind is in sovereign territory that cannot be invaded by guilt or ridicule. Keep your head down, maintain your internal containment, and prepare your spirit for the final quiet execution of your destiny. The ultimate test of human character is not what you do when the world is watching, but what you build in the complete absence of an audience. We live in a society that suffers from an absolute crisis of external validation, where people cannot manifest a single ambition without broadcasting it to the masses for immediate applause. They treat their goals like a public commodity, venting the very pressure required to achieve them before the real work even begins. This is the profound trap of external dispersion. When you tell everyone what you are going to do, what you are building, or how you plan to change your life, you receive a cheap, premature hit of dopamine that tricks your brain into feeling the satisfaction of the victory without ever enduring the sacrifice. The ancient Stoics practiced a radical form of internal containment. They understood that an ambition, like steam in an engine, must be tightly compressed if it is ever going to drive a heavy load forward. Look at the immense pressure cooker effect of keeping your grandest ambitions entirely private. When you make a decision to transform your body, your finances, or your mindset, and you tell absolutely no one, you create a massive psychological reservoir. The energy that would have been wasted bragging to friends, posting on social media, or explaining your vision to skeptics is forced downward, directly into the heavy daily execution of the task. You are left alone with the raw weight of your work. This intense privacy creates a profound level of internal focus. You are no longer performing for a crowd. You are competing exclusively against the person you were yesterday. If you stumble, you suffer in silence, adjust your strategy, and keep moving. If you succeed, you don't throw a festival for the world to see. You simply stack the win, lower your head, and look toward the next horizon. This level of self-contained execution makes you an incredibly dangerous individual to compete against, because your rivals can neither predict your moves nor understand the source of your silent momentum. This internal containment serves as your ultimate immunity to workplace and social sabotage. In any professional or social hierarchy, the moment people see your ambitions clearly laid out, they will instinctively look for ways to pull you down. Human envy is a quiet, creeping disease, and people will actively sabotage what they cannot comprehend or achieve themselves. If they know you are gunning for a specific promotion, an elite project, or a radical lifestyle change, they will weaponize gossip, manipulate timelines, and create structural roadblocks to trip you up. But how can someone sabotage a target they cannot see? When you walk into your workplace or your social circles with an easy smile, a cooperative attitude, and an absolute impenetrable silence regarding your personal goals, you render your enemies entirely blind. They treat you as a standard player in their game, completely unaware that you are quietly building an entirely separate empire right beneath their feet. Your execution remains invisible until it is absolute. We now approach the final philosophical climax of this entire journey. True inner strength is not the loud, aggressive bravado of the insecure. It is the quiet, terrifyingly steady presence of the man who needs nothing from the outside world to validate his existence. Look at the absolute satisfaction of quiet execution. There is no feeling on this earth that compares to the moment you achieve a massive, multi-year goal in complete secrecy, looking around at a world that has no idea how hard you fought, how much pain you endured, or how brilliant your victory truly is. You do not need to post a photo, you do not need to write an explanation, and you do not need to beg for a single congratulatory comment. The reality of your achievement is woven into the very fabric of your character. You have become the master of your own mind, the sole ruler of your inner citadel, and an absolute force of nature that moves through the world without being moved by it. Your life is a sacred, private masterpiece. The judgments, the criticisms, the praise, and the confusion of the masses are nothing more than passing clouds over an unyielding mountain. Let the world scream its opinions into the void. Your only duty is to remain firmly anchored in your own nature, practicing absolute discipline, holding your boundaries with beautiful restraint, and allowing your silent actions to speak with the roar of thunder. If you found value in uncovering these hidden truths today, you will find equal strength in the other deep philosophies waiting for you on this channel. Explore them, fortify your mind, and continue walking this path of quiet majesty. Until we meet again in another video.